What's up, NFL fans? Welcome back to another episode of Four Down Territory. I'm your host, Luke Easterling, as always, joined by Doug Farrar from Touchdown Wire. Doug, how are you this lovely Tuesday morning? We're filming this Tuesday afternoon?
Tuesday morning, afternoon, whatever it is, it's all a blur. There's been a lot of football lately, which is good, but it's,
There has been a lot of football. Let's start at,
wild card weekend, baby. It was spectacular.
Yeah, my least favorite part of the week, last night's Monday night stinker from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which really was, that was the whole season we've seen from the Bucs offense, right? But let's start on the other side of the ball. Let's start with Dallas. Let's talk about Dak Prescott. After a regular season in which he tied with Davis Mills from the Houston Texans for the league-leading interceptions with 15 and pick sixes with 3, we saw Dak Prescott go into Monday night's wild card game against the Bucs. Obviously, a lot of pressure on him, right? Obviously, the history of the Cowboys in the playoffs and everything that comes to playing quarterback for the Cowboys. And really, he delivered his best game of the season, right? 25 of 33, 305, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, passer rating of 143.3, and he had the bootleg touchdown for number 5. Obviously, could be a different story when they go to Santa Clara to face the 49ers this week. But when you're looking at this game in particular, Doug, what he did against the Bucs on the road with all that pressure, is there enough there to believe he's really turned a corner compared to what we saw at the end of the regular season?
I did see enough. I'd written at length I wrote one article about why he was throwing all these picks and then another article on how he could solve them. I saw some things that they kind of figured out. Prescott was still late on some throws, and there were times when that put his receivers in more danger than they should have been, and that's been the case all season. But he also got past Dallas's first drive, a 3-and-out, in which his receivers couldn't catch a cold in an ice storm. These were all short passes. He missed through one screen, but it was just bad. Then the second drive, they come out as 2 run plays and a sack, and it's like the early parts of the Rocky Balboa movies where apparently he has to take a certain number of punches before he starts hitting back. But once that was out of the way, he seemed more confident in his ability to time things up. Pair that with a Buccaneers defense that Luke didn't seem to want to be on the field about half the time. That helps. But Dak had been shaky against some bad defenses in the regular season too. So it wasn't just, the Buccaneers didn't come to play, and so Dak just eviscerated them for that reason. I proceed with cautious optimism on the subject of Dakota Prescott. As for the 49ers, well, they obviously have superstars, secret and not, at every level of their defense. And my secret superstars last week, I had a defensive lineman, I had a linebacker, and I had a safety for the Niners. So, yeah. But their cornerbacks have been susceptible all year. That's been, and the middle of the middle and the edge have kind of hidden that. But that can bounce this quality performance against the Bucs into something great in a short week. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, listen, I think those first 2 drives look great for the Bucs defense, and I think once they saw their own offense, 3-and-out again, I think it was demoralizing for them at the beginning. I think it was like, oh, well, here we go again, and that tires you out very quickly mentally and physically when that happens.
Tom Brady's passing chart, by the way. Anyway.
Yeah, that can't be the last one, right?
It can't. It can't.
We'll
discuss that soon, but
I'm sure we will. But listen, with Prescott, the Bucs did their part.
No,
right. The Bucs did their part to help Dak Prescott. I'm not going to lie about that. They had miscommunications. They had blown coverages. They couldn't get to the passer after that Vita Vea sack in the first quarter. But your job as a quarterback is to play who's on your schedule, right? You can't be punished for the fact that defense doesn't know what it's doing half the time. He made the most of those opportunities. He made the most of those mistakes and made the Bucs pay for them, right? Mm-hmm. So when you look at all the pressure, this is a bigger picture performance for me, okay? It's less about what the Bucs did or didn't do. It's more about going into this game, Dak Prescott, Troy Aikman's calling the game. You got all these different, things about the lore and the majesty of that franchise, right? Weighing on this one quarterback in this one moment. They haven't won this many road playoff games since 92. They haven't won, enough big games. He hasn't stepped up, all of that. And regardless of the details, he goes out there and drops a 300-yard, 4 touchdown, 5 touchdown, no turnover game. It's just, he rose to the occasion. There's no other way to put it. Again, cautiously optimistic moving forward, I think is the best way to put it. I don't think D'Amico Ryan's defense will be quite so giving, quite so courteous next week in Santa Clara. But again, it was a good sign for Cowboys fans, and honestly, just happy for Dak as a person, as a player.
Yeah.
I think that performance, he needed that in such a big way. And if I can remove my Bucs fandom for just 5 seconds and look at that as an NFL fan, you got to be happy for him with the performance that he put together.
Yeah, but here comes, Nick Bosa and Charles Omenihu and
yeah, enjoy it. Soak it up now, Cowboys fans.
Hufanga, and here comes the ice cream factory, Dak. So enjoy this, and it'll be a fascinating game, that's for sure.
Speaking of disappointing defensive performances, let's go to the Los Angeles Chargers and talk about Brandon Staley, right? 27-0 in the second quarter against the Jacksonville Jaguars. You lose 31-30. Really hope a few people put some money on that when I told you to on Twitter. I tweeted at 27-0. I tweeted 28-27 Jaguars. So many people, please don't put that. Don't put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. I did it, and it happened.
There's falconing and there's chargering. I mean, come on.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I mean, the third largest postseason comeback in NFL history. Brandon Staley showed again throughout multiple ways, right? He's in over his head, even leading up to the game where he played the starters late into that Broncos game. Mike Williams ends up getting hurt, misses this game, and obviously he was sorely missed on the field. I mean, what we've seen over Staley, right, in these late game moments, the big picture things that head coaches have to be good at. Mm-hmm. I mean, should he be the head coach in 2023? Are the Chargers better off going in a different direction here? Even with some of the good things we've seen from him, are these mistakes just too costly?
Well, we saw on Tuesday, per multiple reports, that he fired offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi, which is a win for ADOT enthusiasts everywhere. And speaking of coordinators, we've all seen coaches who are better coordinators than head coaches. And there are common denominators there. These coaches tend to hide in their playbooks. They can't manage games and situations in the moment, and they tend to come up short in their obvious pathways to victory. We talked about the Broncos game on last week's show, and that played out in the worst possible way in this game. Mike Williams out. Justin Herbert's best receiver. The on-off splits with Williams are insane. You save that guy. You preserve him from the playoffs because you have nothing to gain by playing him. They did it anyway. Joey Bosa, part of the reason apparently he went off was because he's the groin re-injury he suffered in the Broncos game, and he was upset that the Jaguars' offensive line was sort of pulling on that and making it worse. Putting Herbert at risk in that Broncos game. You have to get this stuff, Luke. You can't go in front of the media. And this was the thing. If you look at the difference between how Doug Peterson kept his team in the game down 27-0, just keep chipping away. We're fine. We're good. We're going to do this. After the game, after that huge and a lot of coaching decisions went into that, Staley blamed, he said, we didn't do this on offense. We didn't do this on defense. He mentioned some bad calls from Sean Smith's crew who lost control of the game. We'll get into that in a minute. The one place Staley didn't point the finger was at himself. And you can't go in front of the media and talk about how hard it is, like he did after the Broncos game. It's hard to manage a roster. This is your job. This is what they pay you to do. And, I think the post-game presser was the point where I went, I don't know. I think firing Lombardi gives them one more year, and if they don't see a serious uptick in 2023, I think Brandon Staley will go back to being a great defensive coordinator somewhere. Kind of also wondering, by the way, if that should be what Todd Bowles wants to do, but that's just me.
Yeah. I mean, like on a human level, I hate these conversations, right? Because I hate getting into the whole this guy should be fired thing. Like, it's their families, and I get all of that. Like, if we just look at what's happening on the field, when you assess, again, like you said, Brandon Staley's a phenomenal defensive coach. He's a phenomenal defensive coordinator. Again, we're dealing with the same thing down in Tampa where Todd Bowles is a fantastic defensive coordinator, and the questions are about the big picture, CEO, 30,000 foot, whatever you want to say, like game management, clock management, timeouts, challenges, punting on 4th and 2 down 2 scores at midfield in a playoff game that you have to win.
Believe that.
There's just so many things that are just like, you might not be the right coach to be in this situation making these decisions. And if you don't have somebody on the staff that is kind of charged with helping you do that, and you're kind of left to your own devices and it's not working, I don't know. So again, these big decisions and big moments have cost the Chargers so much over the last 2 seasons that, like you said, I think the OC decision buys him one more year. But that's we've got to see those things get better. And again, it's kind of like the Josh Allen being the outlier in terms of accuracy getting better as a guy went from college to the pros, right? That really doesn't happen. Can Brandon Staley be the rare head coach that figures out magically from year 2 to 3 or whatever how to be a successful head coach in terms of those game managements? I have my doubts. I hope it happens for the sake of Justin Herbert and the Chargers. But man, it's going to be a tough task for him to prove he can do that.
You look at guys like Dick Vermeil and Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll. It usually takes you getting fired and going somewhere else to figure it out.
That's kind of what Bucs fans were hoping with Todd Bowles after the Jets thing, but we're still out on that. So
yeah, well, let's try and move on and get you in a better head. Ouch.
Hey, let's talk about some good news in the coaching ranks, right? Let's talk about what Brian Daboll is doing in New York with the Giants, technically New Jersey, I guess, for you Buffalo fans. But look, this franchise, historic but broken, dispirited at the time, suffered through Ben McAdoo, Pat Shurmur, Joe Judge since Tom Coughlin's retirement in that Super Bowl era. And he has turned Big Blue into a team that could really walk into any stadium. It seems like they walk into US Bank Stadium in Minnesota and beat one of the better teams in the league in Minnesota Vikings. Now, obviously, we've talked on the show before about the Vikings, contender, pretender. Were all those close games, a good thing or a bad thing? Were they really as good as their record indicated? I think that those doubts were very much validated on Sunday with their performance. And I think you can only ride a bad defense so far into the playoffs, right? But with the Giants, with so many candidates for Coach of the Year, right? I'm going to get to that in a minute. But how can you not pick Brian Daboll after what he's done with what he's had to work with his first year as a first-time head coach in that media market with everything that comes along with that? How can you not give it to Daboll?
My vote was for Daboll, and this is the first year I had an actual AP vote. It was the easiest vote I cast on the entire AP ballot. He's done just about everything right. And remember, we talk about experience and, you're in the crucible and what you have to go through. This is a guy who has worked for both Bill Belichick and Nick Saban twice each.
Right.
He's not afraid of anything. He has seen the elephant. The elephant has stepped on his head, and he's gone like, yeah, okay, I'm still here. He came into that situation completely confident. He handed the offense to Mike Kafka. He handed the defense to Wink Martindale and oversaw the whole thing from, again, the 30,000-foot CEO level. That's what he did.
Amazing. What a concept.
He had seen enough to know. Brandon Staley, like 5 years ago, was at John Carroll University. I mean, I'm not, whipping on Staley here, but there are certain experiences that just give you the resolve and the understanding to do this the right way. And before he handed the offense to Kafka, Daboll put his own indelible stamp on it, which, we saw in Buffalo. And If you're not quite sure what that means, Luke, watch the Giants offense this season and watch the Buffalo Bills offense without him. Very interesting. Yep. My second and third place votes were for Doug Peterson and Kyle Shanahan, and I would stick with that. But Daboll should win this in a landslide, and I truly believe he will.
Yeah, I do think you can make strong cases for all three of those guys, right? I really wouldn't be mad at any of them winning it.
Yep.
But specifically with Daboll, what he's done, again, first year, first-time head coach in that media market with the expectations of being the New York Giants. Daniel Jones, what he did with him and his impact this year and the way that offense worked. Look at the receiver room. And no disrespect to Hodgins and Darius Slayton and Richie James.
Hodgins was on waivers at Halloween.
Yeah.
Anyone could pick him up.
Ridiculous what they had to work with at times, and to still be where they are. Again, as a wild card team, you go on the road, you win that game the way you win it. Again, it reflects the attitude and the leadership of that head coach, and I think what he's done, like you said, speaks of all that experience he had. I do think what Doug Peterson has done, taking the Jaguars from the worst record in the league in his first year with them, and making them a division champion, winning a playoff game against the Chargers. That's incredible. Shanahan obviously rattling off 11 wins and counting straight while going from first-string quarterback to second-string quarterback to third-string Mr. Irrelevant rookie quarterback.
Turning Brock Purdy into a legend young Tom Brady. I mean, geez.
Ridiculous. So, again, all three of these guys, very deserving. If any of them get it, I'm perfectly fine with it. But Daboll, again, makes a very, very strong case.
I will say that if I had voted right after what Doug Peterson did to engineer that comeback against the Chargers, it might have been closer.
Might have been.
Man, that was the best coaching job of this season in one game.
Phenomenal.
That would have, I don't think it would have shifted the balance of power, so to speak, but it would have made it a little more interesting.
Doug, let's finish up with our favorite thing to talk about, and seems like a weekly occurrence. It is a day ending in Y, so we have to talk about.
Have we started Ref Wire yet? Because it's
how horrible the officiating is going to continue to be, evidently, on the biggest stages. Friday, ESPN's Adam Schefter reported that multiple coaches and executives in the NFL were aghast at the officiating in the Week 18 Rams-Seahawks game, right? Seattle got multiple calls and no calls in its favor that pushed them into the playoffs. Again, significant impact riding on these calls. The Lions end up getting left out. The wild card round wasn't any better, right? All kinds of issues. You had the Rams-Seahawks game. The guy who was in charge of that entire crew, he gets – what's his punishment, right? Oh, he gets the assignment for the Cowboys-Bucks game, the Monday Nighter, right?
The most high-profile wild card matchup of the
That'll teach him.
Because it's a Cowboys game. That'll teach him. Monday Night Football, that'll teach him. Yeah.
Yep, that'll teach him. Which, again, that game, trying to set my bias aside, horribly officiated in so many ways. But
well,
listen,
I guess we're just not calling pass interference in the end zone anymore. That's
the pass interference. We're not calling holding. It's either way. They called holding on the Bucs defensive line before they called it on the Cowboys offensive line. Yep. I don't know. Again, I try. It's really hard for me to remove the fan bias from that, but Twitter tells me I wasn't seeing things. There were definitely some calls there that could be missed. Even when Troy Aikman is admitting openly that you're missing multiple pass interference calls on his Dallas Cowboys, I feel like that's got to be a sign that you're not getting it done. But listen,
could be a problem.
It's clear the NFL doesn't hold the officials accountable in any reasonable, effective, acceptable, whatever word you want to use way. No. Can this change, or are we just going to have to deal with this?
I'm starting to lose hope. The Elvis Costello lyric, I used to be disgusted, now I try to stay amused. That's kind of where I am. It's like, literally. For years, the league, we hold the officials accountable for regular season performance by assigning the postseason to the best and brightest, but no. Sean Smith's crew never had control of that Jaguars-Chargers game, and they were allowing the Chargers defenders to mug Jacksonville's receivers all over the place. And then, Bosa complains about this and that. It's like, dude, your receivers were committing illegal acts on Jacksonville's guys, and they got away with it. So, and when everyone's unhappy about the officiating, everyone, that doesn't mean it's good. It doesn't mean it works for both sides. Adrian Hill's crew in the Giants Vikings game blowing calls throughout and seemed to make them up later. People are talking about the roughing the passer call on Dexter Lawrence with 2:34 left in the game. There was a play earlier in the game in which Lawrence absolutely roughed Kirk Cousins, and it wasn't called. So I start to wonder if Command Central in New York is saying, okay, you guys missed that one. If you get an opportunity down the road, we'll just, make it work that way. It doesn't. I remember talking with Rich McKay years ago at a combine when he was, was it a Super Bowl? He was the competition committee chairman. And I had, because I was working with Football Outsider at the time, I had access to all the penalty data and the wild swings between crews. One crew would have 80 penalties, one would have 40. Right. And I asked him, you're trying to create parity and equitable situations and all that. How is this not more closely monitored? And McKay, who I have a great deal of respect for, told me, Doug, we're kind of just looking for a pretty good strike zone. You know who Eric Gregg is? Strike zones aren't always pretty good. So there are so many great suggestions about how to make officiating better. But if the NFL is just fine with it at this level, and broadcast deals, they're just printing money all over the place. Maybe the NFL doesn't care. We'll find out at the league meetings in March when the competition committee gets together. And if they create a half a sky judge or say, you must do better, then you just walk away. We'll know. And if that's the case, nothing's going to change, and this is just what we're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, I think we kind of already know the answer to that question, don't we, Doug? If the NFL truly cared about fixing this problem, they would have done it a long time ago. But the truth is they know that we're all still going to watch the games regardless. We're just going to complain about it and honestly probably create more content for them anyway. So I doubt they see it
for us, and they tend to click really well. So, okay.
It does, but it's so infuriating as a product, right? As people who love this game, we do this work because we love the game. And so it's frustrating for them to see, why should we change anything? They don't have any impetus to make any real changes from their perspective. So there's no transparency. There's no accountability. We know exactly down to the dollar how much Jamal Williams got fined for shaking his hips in an unacceptable way, evidently, after scoring a touchdown, which was more, by the way, than Quay Walker got fined for shoving a member of the Lions training staff a week after the Damar Hamlin situation.
Yes, after Damar Hamlin, and the second time this season Quay Walker had done it.
In the same game as you fined a player for dancing in a way that you found unacceptable in the end zone. Like, it's almost laughable at this point. It's almost like they do it on purpose to see if we'll notice. Like, that's how infuriating it's getting to this point. But again, how are we going to know those dollar amounts, but we can't know exactly what's going on with the officiating accountability, who's making what mistakes, how they're being held accountable for that? I mean, again, it's just absurd at this point. The levels of unacceptable. If it's already gotten to this point, I don't know why we should have any hope that the NFL cares about this at all or is going to do anything to fix it in the future. I don't think they can.
I mean, you look at PFF and their player grades and player metrics and Sports Info Solutions and Next Gen Stats, and you can, okay, Chris Godwin had a CPOE of, plus 0.135. Why don't we know what the officiating grades are? Why don't we know?
Why don't we know that? Why do we still spot the ball with someone's foot who was 30 yards away?
I did all that. I'm just saying, if you want accountability, release the grades.
Yeah,
release the grades.
Let's see it.
Put them out there. And, then officials are publicly held accountable. That's, all along, that's been the problem. The pool reports after games, Walt Anderson, the VP of officiating, does half of those. The official doesn't even have to answer for his own horrible calls.
Yep. Walt
Anderson just steps right in like an overindulgent father, like Mike Pereira used to, and like Dean Blandino used to. It's like, why are we protecting these? I mean, I don't think any official should be verbally or physically abused, obviously, but why are we protecting these guys from their own sort of semi-regular incompetence? I don't know.
Hey, we can hope.
If you're worried about betting, I mean, the NFL's in bed with 18 different odds makers at this point. That ship has sailed, my friend. So I don't know what the hang up is.
It has, Doug, and unfortunately, our ship is sailing on this episode. We are done for the week. We're looking forward to another crazy week of football. Mm-hmm. We got the wild card weekend in the books. We got divisional round coming up next with some great matchups. We can't wait to break it down for you next week. As always, for Doug Farrar, I'm Luke Easterling, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.